I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for a live webinar hosted by Jibestream, the premier indoor mapping platform provider, and Indoo.rs, your professional indoor positioning provider. Today, we will be hearing from Jibestream CEO and co-founder Chris Wiegand, Indoo.rs Sales Manager Joe Hennessy, and special guest Brian DeCicco, Senior Technical Specialist, Web and Mobile Developer at Kaleida Health.
Excellent, and thank you, Jody. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. We've got an awesome turnout and a great webinar for you today. Let me just start by taking you through a few of the topics that we're going to cover during the session. And I want to remind you, it is interactive. We're going to have a few polls throughout, and as Jody mentioned, please put your questions in the chat window, and we'll try to get to those right at the end of the presentation. So first, I want to start out just by sharing our perspective on the healthcare landscape today, some of the key drivers and some of the outcomes that we're expecting to see in the next couple of years. And then it just couldn't be better to have a customer on the call. So Brian DeCicco, we're so lucky to have him here from Kaleida Health. He's going to share with us his experiences of the project that we did and the deployment in Buffalo, New York, and lots of great experiences gained on that journey as well. And then we're going to move into a demo of the front end and also a little bit about the platform, the SDKs and our APIs, and the content management system of where ads, moves, and changes are made. And then we'll turn it back to Brian at the end for some takeaways and learnings. I know there's a bunch of people on the call today that are just where he was perhaps just before starting, and there's going to be some excellent learnings that he can share with you. So let's get started. So it's no secret that today hospitals and health organizations are under an intense amount of pressure to create great patient experiences and outcomes. And that hasn't changed. It's just getting more complicated. To add to that, we've got this new dimension to take into consideration, which is being dubbed the experience economy. So people today are, having other experiences at places like hotels and malls, and they get used to having that dynamic mobile experience. They might have traveled to your hospital using Google Maps and Waze, getting that real-time information, and they're really expecting that same level of experience after they get into your hospital and through the continuum of their care. So this adds to that extra dimension of what hospitals have to consider today, and it really also goes into what I think is a common goal among hospitals today, is to become completely situationally aware and patient-centric in their operations and their management. Now, to add to that, what we see in hospitals every day is just constant change. Nothing stands still. We've got patients, we've got staff, everyone's on the move all the time. We've got things that are closed one day and not the next for renovations, emergencies, different things that just make it more complicated to know where things are, and that includes our assets. So all kinds of assets are distributed throughout the facility and sometimes just unaccounted for or even hidden by clinical staff because they want to know where it is when they need it. And this is really a complicated situation for hospitals because they get into situations where perhaps they know they have enough hospital beds, but they're actually renting more because they don't know where the ones are that they need, and they're going to have to keep up with the demand, so they just go and rent extra ones. So how are a lot of hospitals solving for this? Well, I think that we've all heard the term the Internet of Things with relative to healthcare, and that means a lot of things to a lot of different people. For me, what it means is connecting disparate systems, disparate equipment technologies that really have to come together and talk to each other. And that takes a lot of different things to set up for that. And what you'll find at the heart of it is actually what we're doing with experiential wayfinding, because once you've digitized your maps and connected it with data and created a location infrastructure, it actually paves the way for a lot of the things that we want to do down the road with IoT and different use cases that I'm going to talk about in just a couple minutes. But let's start by looking at experiential wayfinding itself. So right now we're witnessing just a massive transformation. We sit today at about 5% of healthcare providers who are using experiential wayfinding as part of their main engagement strategy with patients, and that's increasing to 25% just in the next year. So if you think about the scope of that change, it's truly enormous, and it's happening all around us right now, really quickly. Let me show you what experiential wayfinding really is. It's not your kiosk that gets you from point A to point B or some of the even early mobile apps that we've seen come out. This is true blue dot, turn by turn, location aware, just like we're used to when we're driving in our car, but more importantly, it's connected to the important systems and services in the hospital. So imagine if somebody comes into the hospital and you know the clinic is running behind, and the ability to send them a message to say, hey, we're running 15 minutes behind, go grab a coffee and come back, we'll let you know when we're ready, and we message them. That's really just the beginning of it, but the idea being that no matter where somebody is and being able to give them the right information at the right time, it's a small thing that makes a massive difference in the patient outcome in their experience at the hospital. So I'm going to change gears and start to creep into a little bit of what I would consider the IoT and some of those other use cases that we can do once we have this infrastructure in place. Let's also now imagine that somebody's coming to the hospital, and instead of them getting, using Google Maps to get to just the standard mailing address, that we're giving them directions to the closest spot that's available to where they're actually going inside. Technically, what we're doing here, even without the parking sensors, is geo-referencing where are you going inside, and then assigning that to the closest parking lot so they don't have to walk a mile when they get out of their car. Now, if you do have parking sensors, we could get them down to the spot level, and we've even integrated with some systems that give us predictive algorithms to tell us where parking should be available so we can get them to generally the right parking lot. And from there, you can do lots of different things. You could have reserved parking, you could have some sort of system for return patients, maybe it's critically ill patients, whatever that might be, but you now have control of people's destiny in terms of how you want them to arrive at the hospital, and this is going to make a big difference, again, even before they see a clinician. So I'd mentioned things about asset tracking and all the assets being everywhere. Commonly, what you would see instead of a beautiful map like this would be a list database or some sort of GIS-looking map. What we're able to do is not just show you where something is, but actually give you, more importantly, what's its status. It might be the closest infusion pump to me that I think is, what I want to get, but it's actually not ready, it's not clean, or what have you. So by giving a very nice visual reference like this, we're able to get them to the equipment fastest and easiest, and make that clinician's life just a little bit easier. And really the way that we're doing this, just a little bit of background, is that everything in our system, whether it's moving or not, has an external ID associated with it that we can match up with any third-party database, whether that be or system, your parking system, your asset tracking system, and we just take that and visualize that on the map. So again, then once you've had your maps digitized and connected with the infrastructure, these are some of the use cases that you're able to start executing on. I also want to introduce a very important concept at Jibestream called profiles. This is something that just came out the last couple of weeks. We're the only company in the mapping industry that has this. And what it is the ability to take your same maps but create different rules for different types of users. So for example, as a patient at a hospital, I'm going to get the main hallways and I'm going to get regular pathways throughout the facility. Now, if I'm a security guard, we're going to have a different profile which exposes new layers of the map, so back of house areas, restricted hallways, all kinds of things that the public wouldn't see, and then we're going to allow them to have a unique closed experience that they can, in this case, an urgent situation, to be able to get to that as fast as possible. The same thing could apply for facilities managers. Show me all the rooms where lights need to be repaired or equipment needs to be picked up. This is something that's truly unique in the industry, and the benefit is we're managing the maps and the data all in one place, but we're able to create these unique experiences. Okay, last example I want to show you right now is all about data visualization. So again, the concept of having data coming from a third-party system that's targeted, basically anything that has spatial context on a map, we can visualize that. So in this case, a wait time, that's a great thing to show. There's lots of other types of information you might want to visualize, both to the public or just for your staff. And it's just a matter of marrying up the data with the maps. And the maps are broken into layers and objects, so you can really be specific about what data you want to show on what layer of that map. So hopefully you can see just over the last couple of minutes that by becoming the digital landlord of your space and connecting your maps with all kinds of different data and the indoor positioning system, you now have the pathway to, not just the first pain point you might be trying to solve, asset tracking or patient wayfinding, but you've got an on-ramp to lots of different things you can do as you move into the future. So I'm going to take a little break and start our first poll. Jody's going to launch that here, and it is, which use cases are you most interested in, or what resonates the most? So we've got wayfinding, parking, asset tracking, security, or other visualizations like wait times. And we'll just ask you to quickly select something from that list, and we'll let you know where we end up. Okay, and we're going to close that off. And not surprisingly, to start out, about 3/4 of the people were interested in wayfinding, closely followed by asset tracking. So that's very consistent to what we were hearing on the show floor at Tim's just a few weeks ago. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to my friend Joe at Indoo.rs, and he can introduce our client at Kaleida Health.
Thank you, Chris. For a little background, Kaleida Health is the largest healthcare provider in Western New York, and they've leveraged Jibestream's indoor mapping platform with Indoo.rs indoor positioning system to bring indoor maps, walking directions, blue dot wayfinding to the facility, helping patients and visitors more easily navigate to appointments, treatment rooms, and other points of interest. And as a result, Kaleida Health was recently awarded the 2017 Most Wired Innovator Award from the American Hospital Association and Hospital and Health Networks for the wayfinding app. So what does this project entail? It was a web and mobile wayfinding app, and in support of that, Indoo.rs provided and deployed 2,700 Bluetooth beacons from Contact.io. We did the site measurements, and we provided that blue dot. And Jibestream mapped and combined with 24 floors spread across 5 buildings and provided the navigation piece. So let's go back to the beginning. We're lucky to have Brian from Kaleida Health here to talk about the project. Hi, Brian. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So what problem was your organization trying to solve by implementing a wayfinding solution?
The number one thing was wayfinding, just like everyone else who had voted today, or mostly everyone else. As everyone knows, hospitals can tend to be a maze. They're older buildings, buildings tacked on top of other buildings, on top of other buildings. One of ours was well over 100 years old, and navigating that building in particular was very difficult. And we just wanted to make sure that we were giving the best tools to our patients as possible to make their stay and their visit as smooth as possible. And ultimately, we needed to solve this maze through a wayfinding solution, and hopefully we delighted them as well, giving them a nice, easy tool to use.
And Brian, Chris here again, beyond getting, the unsolving the maze of the hospital, was there any kind of hard ROI, or what was really the criteria for success post-deployment once we got this all installed? What are you guys looking to achieve with this?
Primarily, right out of the gate was patient and visitor satisfaction. Patient satisfaction nowadays is really becoming a primary driver in today's healthcare. In a world of bad reviews, one bad experience can make or break for you. And for instance, I had a relative who was recently in the hospital, and I asked her how her stay was, and she said, "Oh, it was horrible." And we said, "Horrible? Why would you say it was horrible?" She said, "Well, I had a bad meal one day, and it was bad." I said, "But your care was good overall?" Yeah, that was fine, but that meal was terrible. So, that set the tone for her entire visit, and maybe a little unreasonable, but when you're in that situation, maybe not so much.
Yeah, heart surgery went perfectly well, but bad oatmeal for breakfast kind of tainted the whole thing.
Exactly. Yes.
So while we were in that due diligence process, we were at your site a number of times, met a number of people like Cletus, your CIO. I'm sure there was other people behind the scenes, and I'm also asking because I know a lot of the people on the line right now are thinking, who's involved in bringing a project like this forward? So can you give us a bit of a background of the various stakeholders that had an impact on this project moving forward?
Sure. Well, in the beginning with our My Kaleida mobile app, it was created because our upper executives said, we need an app. And then we asked, well, what do you want the app to do? And they said, we need an app. So, we started with very much a brochureware type application, but we knew we needed to make it a lot more of a useful tool. And so we were definitely in search of some usefulness for this thing. And all along the site presidents, each of the individual hospitals' site presidents, they'd been wanting wayfinding for many years. And so between them and the CIO, we definitely had the buy-in then to move forward with researching and implementing this wayfinding program. So they were all tired of relying on physical signage that was sometimes difficult or costly to update, and certainly not with the same thing with printed maps. So
Joe, again, could you tell us a little bit about the solution you had in place prior?
Sure. We had a couple of kiosks that we had done ourselves, homegrown effort. I'd hand-drawn the maps, hand-drawn all the routes to each of the different destinations that we were highlighting on those kiosks. And then we placed the kiosks next to the information desks, where our very nice and kind older volunteers were very much against their existence. And anytime anyone went up to use them, they would be hijacked by our volunteers who'd say, "No, don't use that. You come with me. I'll help you out." So I think we were a little bit of ahead of our time at that point, but that was one of our earlier solutions, and it clearly wasn't working the way we wanted it to.
Yeah, that reminds me, Brian, of some other locations where the exact same thing happens. You deploy technology, and the culture has been, the volunteers feel like, and they'll literally say, "If you get to that kiosk, I failed my job." And I think that we're now we need a bit of a culture shift when it comes to things like that. And an example that, from a different industry, the airline industry, when Southwest first put out their check-in kiosk, they took everyone from behind the desks and, sat them right beside the kiosk to help people and really give them the confidence to use it. And I think that's really the success of the programs, is that we have that culture change of, the volunteers being able to help people learn how to use it. Because there isn't always a volunteer when you need it. It's in the depths of the hallway, and it's great if people, know about it and have access and feel confident to use something like the mobile app.
Very true, and that's definitely going to be our approach going forward, to try and get them a little more involved, as well as other people.
Absolutely.
And what was your understanding initially of wayfinding in this industry?
Well, we had a basic idea of what we wanted to do, and we've all seen the mall map systems, the fixed position kiosks that some were interactive, but some not so much at all. And none of them really had any routing capabilities, and certainly none of them had the ability to be utilized or passed on to a phone, so that it turns more into a mobile solution. So as we started our research, we came to realize that this new technology existed. It was super exciting.
After deciding to get started, let's talk a little bit around the journey to take this from a concept to a reality. What were the technical and business criteria you had when selecting the right partners for this mapping positioning project?
Well, we definitely knew that we wanted to embed this into our existing app, and in that case, we didn't want to let the technology dictate what we could or we couldn't do. When I was in college, I had an internship with a gentleman whose studio I got to visit on a daily basis, and he religiously doled out wisdom. And one of them was that don't let the technology dictate what you are looking to do. And as I was doing some early designs, that was exactly what was happening in it. And in the case of some wayfinding vendors, it was clear that the limitations existed, but Jibestream luckily did not have that going against them. So that was the approach we took with that.
Yeah, I think Brian's a great point about, not starting from the technology and building from there. It's really the success of these things is augmenting the existing workflows that already exist. So, if we can have it part of eventually that check-in process, or you get the appointment reminder, and it just augments, the things that you're already doing and making that better. I get to the hospital to the right parking spot, I get checked in, or I'm queued up. It's when we try to do things that are outside of what people are used to doing that the engagement and adoption is lower. So I agree, and in great technology, you should barely feel it. It's just sort of part of the experience. So I had another question about sort of the journey and the evaluation process of when you were evaluating different partners, and thank you very much. We were very fortunate and glad to win this project. What was the evaluation process? Again, I think a lot of people are thinking about the same thing right now on the phone of getting started. What should they be thinking about when they're looking at different partners out there?
All right. Well, first of all, we started probably where most people will start and opened up Google and started searching just to see what was out there. We also did a Gartner call just to see what kind of research they had. And at the time, we found out that this tech was so new that we ended up educating Gartner in some aspects of the topic. So that was a little sad, but still interesting to say the least. So in the end, we found a bunch of vendors that we wanted to interview, and we brought them in. We had them dance in front of us. They did their presentations. They brought in their equipment. We pressed them with a ton of questions, and in some cases, they had to phone a friend to get some answers back from the home office. And we found that Jibestream was very different and all in a good way. And most importantly, like I had said, we had an existing app, and we knew we wanted a seamless integration. And the model that Jibestream was putting forth was an absolute perfect fit. That we've got wayfinding now in our app, and you'll have no idea what technology is driving it. It just works.
Yeah, I think the only thing for sure as we move forward is change. So it's good to keep open and agnostic and not get ourselves painted in any corners, as you'd say. And then because you did have your existing app that we talked about, how did that work for your development process? Can you give a little insight, in you being the actual developer on the project and project manager and all those sort of things all at once? Tell us a little bit about that process.
Sure. I think we took the road a little less traveled. We're a small team. We didn't have the necessary skill set to develop natively for iOS or Android. So we went with what we knew, which was the HTML, CSS, JavaScript stack, and we pushed it through PhoneGap to, in the end, kick out our Android and iOS native apps. And Jibestream's got the SDK for iOS and Android, but they also have an on-par SDK for web, and it fit perfectly with our model. We were able to do everything that we wanted to do and then some. So that was the approach we took. Maybe someday we'll write natively, but for now, this seems to be working well for us.
Great.
And why was having a location-aware solution, a mapping solution, important for this project?
Most importantly is just trying to figure out, where am I? We've all had to open up a paper map and scan it for a few minutes, quite a few minutes at one point in our lives, just to orient ourselves long before you even can worry about where you're going. So all of our users are walking in with phones, and there's no way we would expect them to have to do any searching to figure out where they are, considering that this technology exists. So the location-aware functionality puts them right in the center of the map and lets them get right to where am I going immediately. So it's fantastic technology, and we love it.
What do you wish you'd known before the project started that would have made you more prepared? I mean, meaning what internal or external considerations were important during this process?
Over time, it became very evident that this was more than just opening up an SDK and doing a little bit of coding. To get it right, really right, it takes time, not just in the programming, in the learning about new features as they come out and etc. But to be able to take the time to come up with the concepts, work them up in use cases, get the buy-in from all the stakeholders, put together the budget, get the permissions to do everything. And one of our bigger problems was getting the base floor maps so we could get them to Jibestream to be digitized. That turned out to be one of the bigger hurdles we had to get over. And then right towards the end, coordinating and getting all the beacons installed throughout the facility for the indoor positioning portion of it. So, there's a lot to it, but in the end, it was very much worth it. And luckily, I also had a couple of project managers over the course of the project who helped along just to get some of the pieces in place so that it wasn't all left to me.
Yeah, and you mentioned that point about the CAD drawings. So I remember, when we first started off with Conventus, it was really easy because the building was actually brand new. It wasn't even finished when we first did the walkthrough. But some of the older buildings took a bit of time, and I know, again, a lot of people on the phone probably are wondering the same thing. Where the heck am I going to get these base building drawings? Can you give them a tip on sort of who owns this and where to start that process of finding them?
Sure. In our organization, it was the planning department. They are primarily responsible for all construction projects, and as a result, they've got the CAD drawings somewhere, somehow stored away. And getting in contact with them and getting their time to do the research, find the files, and get them for me took quite a bit, because we are undergoing quite a bit of construction. So they were busy. It took some time to get those files, but ultimately we did get them from them, and it all worked out all right.
Absolutely.
So where do we go from here? Brian, what has been the ROI or the key metric for success for Kaleida, and what do you think it will be long term?
I think initially, in the traditional sense of ROI, people think of it from a financial perspective. I don't think we're in that particular situation yet. We are really going after patient satisfaction scores, and that can be measured through HCAHPS and other patient surveys. So as long as we get good buy-in from the patients and visitors to use the app, and hopefully give them a good experience, our patient satisfaction scores, we hope will go up as a result of it. Eventually, as we get more functions added and built, some of that more of a financial ROI will come into play.
And Brian, maybe that's sort of on the roadmap discussion. I'd presented earlier, different use cases like asset tracking and things that can be done once you have all this infrastructure. What do you think sort of the short and long term holds for what you're going to do with the app next there?
Well, now that we've got wayfinding done and our base map system is in place, we are definitely looking to do some additional projects. One of them would be to create an app that is specifically focused at the staff level, and particularly new hires, ones who might need to become accustomed to the not only the front of the house, but the back of the house as well. And now with this new functionality that just rolled out for map profiles, that's going to be gold for this particular project. In addition to that, we're also working on an accreditation readiness application, which will be utilized by our rovers that go around each of the facilities to each of the units and do inspections, much as a DNV or a JCO inspector would do, and just to make sure that we're in perfect shape for when those audits do come around. And one of the functionalities of this app will be the ability for the rovers to pinpoint issues that they find, particularly with physical deficiencies or issues, broken light switch, blown out bulb, stained ceiling tile, etc. And this will allow them to drop a pin on the map so that the people responsible for fixing the issue will know exactly where they're going, and we can then ultimately create a wide view map of all particular issues that might be outstanding, more for the administrative side of things. We're also looking to do a system that will be based on asset tracking for surgical suite efficiencies, so we can make sure that we've got people and equipment moving as efficiently as possible during surgical procedures, so that we reduce downtime and waiting. And just asset tracking in general. We've got tons of wheelchairs that go missing, like you said. People hoard them just so that they know that they have them when they need them. We're looking to do some location aware notifications for when equipment might go into places that it shouldn't be going to. This list is endless. The more that we talk about this particular product and show what it can do, the more feedback we get from other staff to say, hey, what about this? Can we do this? Can we do that? So it's very exciting. There's a lot that we can do with this now that we've got the base map system in place, and as a result, that I'm sure financial ROI will definitely come into play once we get some of these tools launched.
It doesn't sound like you're going to be suffering any boredom in the next little bit there, Brian.
No, not even a little bit.
Absolutely. My last question about this section is really about, we've got the app done. It's in the App Store and available. A lot of people ask me, how do you promote it? How do we get people using it? So can you tell us some of the strategies that you guys have started to use there to get people onto the app?
Well, first of all, we work hand in hand with our marketing department. They've been very instrumental in helping us promote this. We've got large posters throughout the facilities promoting the application and its individual functions. Of course, we promote it on our website. We also have table cards and handouts that are in place in our surgical areas. One of the other functions of the My Kaleida app is a waiting room messaging system, and this allows users to receive notifications as the progress of the surgical procedure is going on. And the pre-registration people are highly involved now in promoting the app and its use and all the other functionality, including the wayfinding. So that's going back to our volunteer problem, where before they were fighting it, now we've got our staff actually promoting it. So as we add more and more facilities, we only have 2 turned on now, but we're about to turn on the rest of our facilities fairly soon. We will be getting our clinics involved in promoting the app and all of its functionality. So it's going to be a team effort. Marketing and branding is not just tied to a marketing department. Everybody's involved in delivering that message, and we'll really try to make sure that does hold true.
Yeah, that's great. And I think once I show the app in a minute, the stickiness of it is that it's surrounded by a bunch of other functionality, which again, if it's part of that normal experience for people, certainly will increase the adoption and engagement. Just before I switch over to the next section, our demo, I'm going to open up a poll, and the poll question is, why not now? So we see not everybody, we see lots of people doing this, and there's a lot of movement happening and good reasons to do it, but is there anything holding you back today? That would be not sure how to get started, budget constraints, don't trust it'll work, or other. And if it's other, please put that, perhaps that answer into the chat bar. Okay, so we've got about a quarter of the people not sure how to get started, so we can certainly help you with that. And then a large number of people, about 50%, are in the budget constraints. So that's something that I think is changing, certainly for the better over time. We've seen a lot of costs come down and the availability of information and technology coming together. So that's an ongoing thing, but we will take that, and if you have any specific questions around these, again, put them into the chat bar and maybe we can answer at the end or afterwards. So let me switch gears here, and I want to just go over to show you what we've done, or what Brian has done, more accurately, with our technology. And the best way to experience this is really by downloading the app yourself and being at the hospital, at one of the Kaleida hospitals, because it is location aware. So when you're on site, you'd have the blue dot experience. And here I'm just going to go through a quick simulation of what's there, but please go ahead and download it from the Apple Store or Google Play Store. So one thing I want to note right away is that we've got things like the emergency wait times, which makes it more sticky, real-time information, and there's lots of different ways to get maps. There's you can go ahead and do a full search and look for something. In this case, it's going to show us the first reference of it. Again, if it had been at the hospital, I would have that blue dot. We've got all those gestures we'd expect to see, pinch and zoom and rotate, so we can have a really smooth and nice user experience. And then other times, you may want to just embed maps or the option for a map into something else that, for in this case, Joe's Deli. If somebody wants to get a reference of where to go or where that is, they can just click on it. This will pop open the map. We can also share thumbnails of a map, so you could have exposed that as just a little teaser of where it is, and then you click on it and get the full interactive. And here we can see getting the blue dot or turn-by-turn information to Joe's Deli. And that is just one experience. Again, all of the locations in the hospital are mapped, so you can easily do quick searches or embed these maps or snippets of maps into different parts of your, perhaps even website. Let me just go into the backend system. Before I start, I want to just reference what is the Jibestream technology. It's really made up of three things. This is the content management system, our SDKs, Android, iOS, and web, and then we've got a full API library that's also, as three of those things put together, considered our platform. What we're looking at right now is the CMS, our content management system, where you would manage your users, so we can have role-based access. There's no limit to the number of users or types of users. We also manage things like all your amenities, so the different types of icons for restrooms and parking and whatnot, your path types, escalators, elevators, and walkways, and then languages. So this is a very important component. Another differentiator for Jibestream is that we can import and export any digitizable language to host that as part of your experience that you want to provide. And an important part of this is it's not just a Google Translate. We have really nice, easy ways for you to import the entire language file and then export it out if you need to get translations done. What we're looking at here is what people most commonly would do, just making small adds, moves, and changes. We often would like to integrate through an API to push changes, but if you do need to log in and make a change, you could do that here. Another big differentiator for Jibestream is really about how we deal with objects and layers. So you can see me turning on and off the different layers, which also means that every single layer of the map is addressable with real-time data. Could have been parking information, could have been asset tracking information, and you can really create unique and different experiences for those different use cases. What I have on right now is just the navigatable pathways. So this is where we would also use the Indoo.rs blue dot to snap to grid or snap to path so that we can see where I am in real time as I'm navigating through the hospital. And then the waypoints are really all the different destinations that somebody could find on the map, which might be, if they're orange, a destination that's already plotted. If it's red, it's an amenity like a restroom or an ATM. And the white dots represent areas that you can plot and put new information on the map. So let's just take a quick look. Let's just say I have a new defibrillator and I want to put it right here. It's as easy as that. Just drag and drop it, and then as soon as you press publish, we're now going to have that available for updates. The next user is going to be able to see where that new defibrillator is, and it's going to cross all of the different devices, anything really touching the API. So all of those different map profiles, doesn't matter where it is. You could restrict it if you want to, or you could send these updates globally. Okay, we can also add destinations very quickly. Once again, it would be easiest if we have an API and it's just a push integration, but I'm going to do something kind of fancy here. Cafe Brian. This external ID references the spatial context or spatial reference to where it is on the map that would then sync up with that third-party database or system. We could have hours of information, and I know you're not allowed to sell beer in the hospital there, Brian, so we're going to just go with chocolate. And this is a keyword, so just like we would do in other search engines, I type a couple of letters, it's going to associate that location with that type of information. And sometimes there's multiple locations that have the same thing, so you're going to be able to give people a choice of which one they want to go to. And then I just need to press submit, and now I have that in my system, but it's not mapped yet. So I go ahead and I drag and drop, and I put it here, and now it's on the map. So we re-platformed a couple of years ago. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for people to make these changes. And so everything is like this, WYSIWYG or drag and drop. You can also do structural changes within here. So if you want to split or merge a unit, oftentimes we see clinics that are breaking down or expanding. You can do that, change walls, and then you just publish them as I would have, just like a data change. The next thing I want to show you is the developer tools. So like Brian, if you have developers that are going to be creating their own apps or embedding into something that already exists, this is a really handy tool. On your left-hand side is really all the functions of the SDK and showing you all of the different interactions you can create. And down below here is all the different code samples. So we want to start people off with starter maps and starter code so they can get kind of playing around with it and find out what's possible. The reason why we've got all the different colors here of all the different icons and the floor plan itself is that, as I mentioned to you, the maps are broken into layers and objects that can be managed individually. It might just be a sort of a temporary state, you know, this parking spot is free or busy, or you might want to make a programmatic change to, you know, update the look and feel of your maps across hundreds of malls or hospitals at the same time, and it's going to make that effect all at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to change a quick line of code. Trust me, I am no developer. And I'm going to put in something new here. And I can now just go up and run that, and we should get a nice bright red map. There we go. That's as easy as that. The other thing that we want to show, I won't get into much detail here, but is, you know, our documentation around our APIs. So this is our Swagger active documentation. We have a whole library of REST APIs, and we can integrate very easily with any new ones. So that's the whole architecture, is that we know it needs to be interoperable, and we provide developers with all that documentation they need around APIs, and really everything in the system is super well documented. And you're looking to, you know, find anything, you'll find not just how it works, but actually sample code and all the other things you're going to need to get started. All right, so I would like to hand it back to you, Brian. You know, as I mentioned to you, there's a lot of people on the call that are right where you were just before you got started, and maybe you can leave them with some parting words of wisdom.
Okay, well, most of all, ask the right questions, especially when you're doing your vendor evaluation. Ask them everything, push them to the edge till they reveal everything that they have to hide or show. You know, we've had many experiences with vendors who end up selling us vaporware, and that's never a good situation to put yourself in. So just make sure that you've asked everything that you could possibly ask, and they've given you an answer that you feel is the most honest as possible. And in our case, a bunch of the vendors had very canned solutions. They would offer wayfinding, but you'd have to use their own app, which they would brand for you. And in our case, we wanted it to be integrated into our system, so that took them right off the table to begin with. Have your plan. In our case, we were able to dip a toe into the water, if you will. We started with one of our smaller buildings, a brand new building too, so getting the maps was easy. The amount of traffic going through that building wasn't all that large, so we felt very comfortable with being able to more or less put a beta out there of this product, and everything went very well. We got a lot of good feedback from that initial rollout, and we were able to learn from that and apply it to our next rollouts, which were our full hospitals, and continue to think about what you can do with this stuff, because it's so flexible and there are so many opportunities, and there are a lot of people out on your staff that once they hear what you can do and what some of the possibilities are, the ideas will never stop. And ultimately, don't let that technology dictate what you can or cannot do. Find the most flexible system that will work for you, and put it to work. So that's about it.
That's awesome, Brian. And for those of you that didn't get a chance to jot everything down, we're going to post a checklist that we have that perhaps can help you get started on making that list of things that you need to do to get going. And you'll see that in the right-hand toolbar. It just got posted a PDF, the Getting Started Guide. So go ahead and download that when you have a chance. And the last interactive thing we want to do is one more poll, and that's going to get posted now. The question is, when are you planning to start your project? So we have, like yesterday, 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12, or sort of early planning, 12 months plus out into the future. Okay, so we've got pretty evenly a third across 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12, and 12 plus, which is pretty standard, I would think, in terms of what we see coming in. So with that, I would like to thank everybody, and really special thanks to Brian DeCicco for being here. There's just nothing more valuable than hearing it from a customer themselves of their experiences. And the next step is, we were able to share a lot with you today, but perhaps you'd like to book a personalized demo and we can talk about your specific requirements. And you can go ahead and do that just by emailing us at info@jibestream.com. Or you could also go ahead and email sales@indoo.rs.